I really enjoy creating jobs. I
Nice.
think I'm creating at this moment probably, you know, either a complete or like probably about 100 people are partially or fully dependent on my company for a living. And I love
Fantastic.
that. I love that. That's the best reward of an entrepreneur is being able to
Yeah.
create that for others.
Welcome to Behind the Screens, conversations with background screening pros. I'm Les Rosen, your host, and I'm excited to have you here. On this podcast, we chat with the people who know the background screening world inside and out. Executives, industry experts, legal pros, and more. We dive into their personal stories and insights to give you a real look at what's happening behind the scenes. Whether you work in the screening industry or are just curious, Behind the Screens bring you the real, unfiltered conversations from the people who make it all happen. Stick around for stories you won't hear anywhere else. And ladies and gentlemen, welcome to another session of our podcast, Behind the Screens, conversations with background screening pros. Our executive sponsor is the Background Screening Pre-Employment Directory, our good friend Barry Nixon. And today's guest is real special to me. And I have to tell you, the reason is that before the program, I was trying to remember who was the very first person in the background industry who I ever talked to or met in person. And I think it was the person we're about to talk to, kind of the person who, well, I've often said is kind of the gold standard for criminal research and data. I think my oldest friend in the industry who has been a mentor and a guiding star and a supporter and a good friend, Mr. Timothy Baxter. Timothy, welcome to the program.
Thank you. Amazing to be here. Amazing to be chatting with you.
It's great. So I always start off asking, where are we chatting from? I'm in Novato, California, north of San Francisco, and where are you?
Well, first, let me say thank you for that very kind introduction. I am in Reno, Nevada. I'm in my family home. I'm just passing through. I was in California doing some work and had a little bit of fun. I came out with my son, Luke, and we went to Monterey to a racetrack near Monterey, famous racetrack, Laguna Seca. And we did 2 days of California Superbike School.
Wow.
Yeah, basically it's a cornering school, like how to take a 205 horsepower motorcycle around the track as fast as you can.
All right. We're going
Yeah.
to have to talk about that. We have a section called Fun Facts. So we're going to
Yeah.
find out about taking 200 horsepower
205 horsepower.
motorcycles, taking it around track as fast as you can. That's
Yeah.
fascinating. And what's interesting, and people may not know it, but you are, some people are bikeable, but you're national. I mean, you started off in San Francisco, which is where you and I first met, and then you
Yeah.
have family connections in Reno, and you now live full time in Florida, right?
Yep. Starting to be a little bit in West Virginia now as well.
Okay. So
Yeah.
you've lived all over the place.
Yeah. Yeah.
I remember visiting in Florida, and you took me kayaking, basically right at your front door. It seemed, as far as I remember, we went.
That's right. Yeah. That's right. We went out kayaking. That was great.
So anyway, for anyone who doesn't know you or of you, which I don't think that's possible, but just in case it is, tell us what you're currently doing. What do you do? What do you find interesting about it?
Well, I'm still the CEO and founder of Baxter Research, and we've just spent the past year and a half. I started rebuilding our system. Our system got quite old, so I started to put a new system there. I started in April of 2020, and it took 4 years. And we were starting to implement the system, and I scrapped it. I just decided to scrap it and start over again in the face of AI. So now we built an AI-based system, and we're just into our user acceptance testing phase. So I should be onto that system, I would say, in the next month or two. And that's been a major win because, anybody who's been in our industry, I don't know how long our system has been around, for sure since maybe over 20 years, 23 years, 24 years, if that makes sense.
Right.
So to have a system that long, to be kind of operating at enterprise level, it takes a lot of ingenuity. So it's we are way overdue for a new system. So that's an exciting thing.
So when did
And,
you start Baxter Research? I said you were I think the very first person I met in the industry. You were the first partnership I had in terms of data supplying, and that's when you and Sarah were in San Francisco, or primarily. When did Baxter Research start?
I had gone to work for a friend of mine who did legal support services, and that was in 1991. And before long, I then I went away and I came back and he rehired me and I actually formally hired me. So I started to work for him again. But the first thing I did was they were building a new Costco in San Francisco and they needed to do background checks. And a company had called him, even though he didn't really do background checks, he did legal support services. A company called him and asked him if he would do these background checks. And so he asked me to go figure out how to do it. So all I had was, basically some names and the address of the court. And so I went down to the criminal court in San Francisco, and it took me a few days to get my wits around it. I got some help from, I think there was an elderly guy there who worked for Pinkerton. There were a couple of other guys in there. I mean, the industry was pretty new, but they all helped me sort of get my wits around, how to do a background check. It started with that, and we did all the background checks for that Costco. And then before you knew it, he started getting reaches from other clients, I think by word of mouth. And I ended up organizing his old wholesale business. I remember at one point where I walked into his office and there were files everywhere, all over the floor. So I thought, wow, okay, we need to have a mind for the business. So I brought in a computer and set up a crude computer system so we could start tracking everything. And it went from there. Before you know it, we were expanding from San Francisco into San Mateo, down to Santa Clara, across the Bay to Alameda, etc. And it got big pretty fast. And then he decided he wanted to sell it because it was becoming the tail that wagged the dog on his other business. And so ultimately, the person he wanted to sell it to wanted to take over my job as a researcher, my hats as a researcher. And I was now in San Francisco, San Mateo, and Santa Clara. So I just gave up my hats and then I was out of a job. And I decided to start my own, business. And the one thing I didn't want to do back then, I would call the clients from the court from a phone booth. And I'd call them and call in all the results. Toward the end of the day, I'd get more orders and then I'd go process them and then call in the results till the court closed. I'd be at the court all day, just, going to the phone, doing the checks, going to the phone, doing the checks and moving around.
This was the mid-90s or so by this time? Or?
Yeah, this is like 94.
Okay.
94, 95 we're getting to now. And so a lot of the clients knew me. They knew my name, Timothy Baxter. And so I'm kind of out in the cold and I've decided I didn't really want to start my own business, but I'm like, I have a little choice. I got to start my own business. And I remember that I wanted to keep my integrity in. I didn't want to use any of the advantage of all the relationships that I already had. The only cheat that I did is I just put out my shingle as Timothy Baxter Research. But I had all the phone numbers, all the contact data, the names, and I didn't use any of it. And so, I had to solve the puzzle of like, how do I promote? How do I become known? And this is before the internet, right? Before cell phones. I'm pretty sure. And so I found out that at the library, they have phone books and yellow pages and white pages of other cities and other states.
And some of our listeners may not know what a phone book is, but go ahead.
The big book with people's phone numbers in them, yeah. And they got yellow pages for businesses, right?
And these are physical books with pieces with paper you looked at, right?
Yeah. And I'd only sort of kind of known the underbelly of the industry at that point. So somebody had told me that there's a concentration of retail background screening companies, I think in Fort Lauderdale and places in Florida and also in Texas, states in Texas or cities in Texas. So I went to the library and I pulled the phone books for those areas and I went through all the yellow pages and I looked for anything that had to do with employee screening. And I took down the numbers and I got quite a few identities or contacts, and I steered clear of anything that I knew that my friend August, his company, had already. And so I started calling those numbers and I got their addresses. I spent $60 on this little trifold and I put Timothy Baxter Research on it, put the counties that I covered, and I put a little Sherlock Holmes on it, I'm probably not the only guy who did that. And I sent those out. So they went out, and then I was just sort of waiting. And the first reach I got back, I was sort of out and about somewhere, and I had a pager, And so I got the page, and I went right to a phone booth. I called the company I called who was calling me, and the person said, can you do a bankruptcy research? And I'd never done bankruptcy research. I'd never done civil research. I was just doing the criminal research. And, I said, sure. And
that's the right answer. Sure, why not?
I had to start somewhere, right? I said, sure. And so she starts to list off all the documents that she needs. And basically, she's speaking Phoenician to me. I have no idea what she's saying. And so I just said, well, I'll tell you what, why don't you fax it to my office, which was like my apartment where I lived, fax it to my office, and I'll be running over and pick it up soon, and I'll get that taken care of for you. So I went straight to my apartment. I got the fax, and I got all these documents that she wanted me to get. And then I was a little outside of San Francisco and on the way to Daly City. So I got my bicycle, put it on BART, went downtown. First, I found out where the bankruptcy court was. And on my way to the bankruptcy court, I stopped at B. Dalton's, and I went downstairs to their legal section, and I pulled out like bankruptcy books and went to the glossaries and started looking at these terms and trying to figure out what these terms were. And I did clear up some of those terms. And then when I was done with that, I just went to the bankruptcy court. I got the clerk to help me with the rest. I put together the whole order. I FedExed it to the client, and boom, they were happy. And that was my first client. But it wasn't it wasn't the right industry. And then the second call I got was from a company called Research and Retrieval. And there's two gals who ran it. They were awesome. And, I did something similar for them. I went to, the circuit court or civil court. And that I just got into doing research and retrieval, and that became a little company, and I got more clients and I grew, but it wasn't what I had set out to do. And then before long, I started getting some reaches for doing criminal background checks, from the pre-employment screening industry. And after a while, I got really busy, and it was very hard to keep those two different, jobs or publics or companies, if you will, because you need to be in the criminal court like I used to be all day, and you can't be running around all over the place fetching this and fetching that. And so I took that entire business and I gave it to a friend, and it was up to something like a couple $1,000s in income, a month. And so I just gave it away and started focusing on what I originally wanted to do. And I was still Timothy Baxter Research, but I say right around 1996, I formally incorporated and became Baxter Research.
That's a fantastic origin story. For those people that are into the whole startup area, you go to some of the origin stories of like Airbnb. Apparently, from what I remember reading, those guys basically out of their apartment just went to their neighbors on the same floor they were on and say, can you rent a room? And out of that grew a large, and the same with you. I mean, that story is fascinating. It's just grit and hard work and baby steps, and then and now Baxter Research is a household name in the screening industry, and kind of like I said, the gold standard of research, and it's just amazing. And then from there, the rest is history, right?
Yeah, the rest is history. It was. I don't think from that point forward, I remember I had to pull my wife Sarah into it because we were expanding so fast, and that was a bit of a trick to pull the right people into it and had them up and put them on post, but she thought I was ruining our lives. And I really was. I was ruining our lives. It was so hectic. And of course, we were the last ones to be paid. I kept telling her, look, our ship's going to come in, we're going to get a paycheck. But in the meantime, we had to pay everybody else and borrow money and pay everybody else and borrow money and pay everybody else. And so we eventually made it over that hump. And so she accepted Baxter Research into our lives, and and then everything was pretty good from there.
And those I don't remember there were court fees back then, but you had to absorb those, and you had to pay all the runners. And
yes,
as you opened up county by county, and you personally, I recall, would go to a county and make sure you thoroughly understood it, right, before you opened it up. Yeah. Well, you mentioned court fees. That's how I lost my job.
Alameda at that time, Alameda County pulled their index for whatever reason and started charging $5 court fees.
Right.
And the guy I was working for, for whatever reason, I think it was like an entire month, he incurred those court fees, and his clients found out about him when he billed them. And pretty much one for one, they go, I'm not paying these.
Right.
And he was suddenly like upside down. He had a former bankruptcy, as I recall, so he didn't really have credit. And that's why he suddenly decided he had to sell the business. And I didn't tell you that part, but he owed me about $8,000 at that point.
Which
I was trying
really,
I was trying to help him, get the plane off the trees and into the air, but he was just not that good with finances, and that's why he ended up with that solution to sell the business.
and in
Which
those
is
days,
ultimately a good thing for me.
yeah, and that was a lot of money back then. I mean, it still is a lot of money, but still, right?
was a
But
lot of
even more
money.
so. God, what a great origin story. When you dig into the details, and you probably haven't thought of this for a while, right? But when you dig into the nostalgic details, it's like, God, how did we make that plane fly? Yeah, we did.
Yeah.
Oh, that's fantastic.
Yeah. It's true.
And now, obviously lots happening, and you've been an icon in the industry. From that, do I say humble beginning or trying beginning? That's fantastic. Yeah. Wow. So that was your, I generally asked about a career path. I think we covered a lot of that. We covered a lot of your journey. What were you doing before that? Was kind of your first gig or?
My career path. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. I was listening to your interview with Dan Schumacher, and I was listening to his career path. And that's actually a career path. I mean, a serious career path. That guy was very impressive. But my career path was pretty unorthodox. I discovered, that my mom worked for the airlines. And I really became aware of that when I was 17. And I started traveling. And by the time I was 18, I graduated high school, and then I was gone. I traveled between pretty much 17 and 25.
Wow.
Yeah, I probably went to maybe 70 or more countries. And I just had a backpack, and I would travel with a tie and a jacket and a backpack and not much else, because the tie and the jacket, no matter where I was, would get me into first class. And
Right.
yeah, my mom worked for American. I literally the world was my oyster. I could fly anywhere I wanted for free or occasionally 10%.
Wow.
And once I discovered that, I was just gone. I mean, I tried to go to school a bit after that. I would come back. I tried to do a semester of college. But compared to going out in the world and, getting your education that way, I just couldn't leave it alone. So one year, when I was 19, I left this house in Reno, Nevada, and I went east. And exactly 1 year later, I came back from the other direction. Just went all the way around the world. I remember that well because I was in New Zealand, and I celebrated New Year's Eve, and then I got on a plane and I flew to Reno just in time to celebrate New Year's Eve with my friends, downtown.
Yeah, that's the weird thing about flying from the east. You arrive earlier the same day than you left, so you can do 2 New Year's Eves. That's right. Yeah.
Or 2 birthdays or whatever you want to, celebrate.
That's fantastic.
Yeah.
Oh, that's a great story. I did not know that. I mean, every
Yeah.
interview I've done, I found out something just jaw-droppingly fantastic. And those were the days when the airline family benefits were, you just show up at the airport and you're a family member and you have a suit and tie.
Standby.
Yeah, and there's an empty first class seat. It was yours.
It was surreal. Like there were times when, I tried to live on like $8 to $10 a day, literally.
Yeah.
And you could do it. I hitchhiked a lot. And so you'd be staying in a $1 hotel in Egypt, and then get on a plane and be in first class drinking like champagne and eating like lobster. I'm like, what did I do to deserve this? It was an amazing life, I tell you. It was it was great. I learned a lot. What can you say? It was an amazing experience. And when I came back, I just couldn't. It was tough to try to go to college, try to do another semester, join a frat, after seeing the world, being in third world countries. It's also a culture shock,
Yeah.
to go out there and get out of the bubble and see what's really going on in the world. But it was amazing. I did end up try to go to college, and I went to college. I ended up living in England for about a year and a half, and I went to college over there for 2 semesters. And, never really had a specific, I loved literature. I liked history. I loved to go into museums when I didn't go to school. Whenever I went to a country, I loved like buying a history book for that country and maybe a book of architecture, and then whatever their best work of fiction or whatever their best work of literature was, and I would just try to immerse myself, try to get into people's houses and and just learn as much as I could. I mean, I love going to the museums. I remember I read Ernst Gombrich's book, The Story of Art, and that just completely opened up my universe to art. And so I would love to go to the great museums. I would seek out the great museums. At one point I went to the Soviet Union. So I went behind the Iron Curtain because, I've been told my whole life about the evil empire. And I thought, well, I'd like to go see it myself and see if it's really the evil empire. And what did I discover? Everybody over there is just regular people, trying to survive, just under more suppression than we were,
Yeah.
And so, that was my career path. And ultimately, I got used to being in European cities, different cities. And when I came home, finally, I think I was 30, this point, no, I was 25 years old. And I came back to Reno. I remember landing and coming to my house, and I just could not believe the amount of space between the houses. I couldn't have it. It was like, what universe am I in? And so I just decided that the closest European city was San Francisco. So I wasn't here for more than a week, and I was gone. And then I moved to San Francisco. And that's ultimately where I met my wife, Sarah. And that's where I started my business and lived in San Francisco for 20 years.
That's fantastic. And that's where I knew you from. That's where we used to get together.
You called me one day out of the blue.
Yeah.
And that's right. And then you you weren't even in the industry. You were curious about it.
Yeah. I was industry curious, right? Yeah.
You were looking for data. And somehow, I don't even know how did you get my number? You probably don't even remember.
I don't, at this point, I don't even remember what I had for breakfast. So, so that would be stretching my memory a whole lot. Now, that is a fascinating story. I've known you all these years, and I did not know anything about that part of your life and of course I'm jealous as all heck because when I hear you talking about that, you're living, from my point of view, you're living the dream. I mean, right. That's just, to me, that's just being able to travel and go to school and live in England and all that. It's just like, oh man, I know. It's amazing. So during this period of time, in all your time in the industry, I do like to ask people, is there any either mentors you want to call out or influencers in your career or people you want to give a shout out to? And it's like the Academy Awards, you can thank a million people, but anyone come top to mind?
Well, yeah, it's funny. I think of that. So there's a poet, Alfred Lord Tennyson, and he wrote a long poem called Ulysses, and it has this one line that says, "I am a part of all that I have met." Mm-hmm. And I think I take that line and switch it around. It's like, all that I've met are a part of me.
That's interesting.
And I feel that's absolutely true in my industry. I was watching, I don't know where I went wrong in life that I didn't know about your podcast. But when you invited me to come join you on it, and I started watching the earlier, podcasts you've done, I'm seeing some of my mentors, including you, of course. I know I'm not unique in naming what you as one of my mentors. I've heard others do it too. But I just think that like I said earlier, it's just like you were an opinion leader in our industry. You were key in putting together a trade association, and it's just like you to give this gift of all these interviews back to the industry, because just like you're saying, I'm listening to them and learning about people I've known like half my life almost now, and you just get all these details about their past, and it's great. You don't have to wait for their funeral to learn these things, I notice that this happens nowadays. You go to the funeral and you hear you learn all this about the person. It's like, why didn't I learn this earlier, But yeah, it's a little hard to, pick exact mentors, because I got myself into the industry. I taught myself how to do it, and I created my own business before I knew anybody.
Right.
But, I was listening to your podcast with Kim Curry, and that was very lovely. She mentioned my name, and she said that I was a mentor for her But what she doesn't know about it, I kind of didn't remember until I saw that podcast interview, is that the only reason I was there at that panel at all, and the only reason I was ultimately involved in the trade association probably, is because she was a client of mine and she was with A-Check, and she handled me to fly from San Francisco to Safety Harbor and go to that conference.
All right.
I didn't know anybody in the industry. And so I did that. I went to that conference and it was amazing. I met all kinds of people. I met her. And so, I wouldn't even been there if it wasn't for her. So she was definitely, I would just say, she's also my mentor.
Oh, that's fantastic. And those were the Steve Brownstein conferences at Safety Harbor. And then they moved over to the Marriott over in Tampa somewhere. I can't remember where. Yeah. And I used to be the keynote speaker in those things. So those were great conferences. Yeah. So that's right. So I knew you already. I'd been to your house by then. And,
I knew you, but I didn't know about those conferences,
Yeah. Oh, that's amazing. Yeah. So what's some early lesson? I mean, I like to ask people, we all learn, lessons every day. I mean, life is one big lesson. But is there some lesson that comes to the top of mind that you want to share that you learned early or that you like to share with other people about, generally in the business sense, but it could be a life lesson. It's just something in the business world that you've learned that has been something that you're glad you learned. All right.
Wow. I probably have an unorthodox one. My whole family on my mom's side hails from like 2 counties in the mountains of North Carolina, basically Appalachia, hillbillies. And I say that with pride. And my grandfather told me a story. He said that during the Depression, he was picking corn, and I want to say he was making like 75 cents a day or something like that. And he just said one day, because I had asked him because he became an entrepreneur and a successful entrepreneur. He told me that one day he's just doing the usual and it just hits him. And he just says to himself, you know what? This won't do.
I love it.
He suddenly gets this big idea. And right there, he decides that he's going to figure out how to make, I think, how to make $250,000 and retire at 50 with $250,000, which, I don't know, count the inflation. What is that today? Like 5 million?
Back then you could do it. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, this is the 30s. And so he did exactly that. And he retired at 50 with $250,000. He was the first person to open up a 7-Up bottling company in Charleston, and he was it, And so I got from that you could make a decision. And you could, not just a decision or a thought, but you could have a causative thought or a causative decision and actually end up there. And so once I kind of had that model in my head, I noticed that in my life, I would make a decision about something. And it would come to be. It would come to happen. You know what I'm talking about?
Yeah.
Yeah, and I'll give you one example that is probably one that's more recent. I mean, it still happens to me this day. But I went to that film, Oblivion. I don't know if you remember that film. It was like a Tom Cruise film. And in this film, they're filming in Iceland. And he rides a motorcycle at some point. And, I'm into motorcycles. So I see him ride this motorcycle on the film set, and he's going across this black landscape. And it looks like he's on the moon, and it just looks incredible. And I'm sitting there in the theater going, I'm going to do that someday.
Yeah, that's a little outside of Reykjavik, the Black Sand Beach, Yeah.
So, 10 years later, a decade later, I'm on a KTM, 350 Enduro with my son, and we're in Iceland. And we're in a little, with a group of riders. It's called, I forgot what they're called. Anyway, and we do our first day and we get to this hut in the middle of nowhere. And we spend the night in this hut and we wake up the next morning. I remember getting up in the middle of the night, hoping I could see the Northern Lights, but I didn't. And
not where you were,
little too, no, you can see them there, but it's a little too early in the season.
Yeah.
And so the next day, the guide says that we'd just ridden the day before to the set of Oblivion.
Oh, that's great.
And it took me like 20 minutes to make that connection. It's like, oh my God, that's my thought, So I think that's one thing that I learned early on is that you can mind over matter. You can direct your life and you can decide where you want to go.
Yeah.
I heard another story very similar. I was listening to a podcast maybe 3 years ago, and there was a guy who was like, 3 times a felon, busted 3 times for drugs. And it was the 3rd time he's back in prison, he's doing his time, and it just thought occurs to him like, I'm just not very good at this as a career. So he starts listening to this motivational speaker. I think his name is Les Brown. Yeah. And he keys in on one thing that this motivational speaker says, and it is, you have to look up to get up. You have to look up to get up. And that resonated so much with me. So now the guy is a successful entrepreneur. He's got his own business, and he's telling the story in a podcast, thrice convicted felon. And on one thing, he lifted himself up, and that's so true in life. You have to look up, and you have to decide, make a decision to get somewhere versus just go along with, I don't know, whatever, be blown along, maybe like a leaf in the wind or something. I don't know, but that's probably, I think, the answer to your question.
That is such a great insight. It smacks a little bit of Napoleon Hill, Think and Grow Rich, but if you think it, you can do it. And the idea that a goal without a plan is just a dream. If you think it, you can make it, and we can go into that. We can spend a whole hour talking about that. But I've seen that in my life too. You just decide, I'm going to do it. and then suddenly it just, you almost will it to come true, but it becomes self-fulfilling if you focus on it. So that's great.
It's true.
So, yeah.
I have one more if I can.
Go ahead.
You want to hear that
go
one.
Ahead. Absolutely.
When I was in New Zealand, specifically, I don't know how old I was, 21, 20, that's probably 20. And I was reading a book called Zen and the Art of Motorcycle Maintenance.
Oh, I remember that book. Oh, yeah.
Uh-huh. Yeah, there are 2 more that I got from that book. One of them was, he said, if you want to paint a perfect picture, make yourself perfect and paint naturally. Now,
that's a great insight.
I don't have any illusions that I can make myself perfect, but I got the idea.
Yeah, exactly.
That you improve yourself, and then just act naturally.
Right.
You know what I mean? So I love that concept. And then the other one in there was a little more elaborate. He describes what I think it would be called the South Indian monkey trap. Yeah.
Okay.
And it's a hollowed out coconut, and you drill a hole in one side of the coconut, and then you attach a cord to that hollowed out coconut and put a knot in the end of the cord so it holds on to the cord for the coconut. You take the other end of the cord, you tie it to, I don't know, a tree or a root or something, and you drill another hole on the other side of the coconut that's big enough for the monkey to put his hand into. And you put rice in the hollowed out coconut, put it on the trail. The monkey comes along, scents the rice, puts his hand into the hollowed out coconut, grabs makes a fist with the rice, and then cannot get his hand out of the shell.
Because they won't release the rice, yeah.
Won't release the rice. So sooner or later along comes the villager with the machete and monkey stew. And he's struggling and struggling and struggling. He can't get away. Well, what's the monkey's problem? As the author points out, it cannot tell the difference between rice and life, the value of rice and the value of life.
That's a great story.
So I decided early on, I say early on, like when I was trying to figure out what I wanted to do with my life, what kind of a job I wanted to get, I decided that whatever I did, I made my pledge to myself that I would not sacrifice my havingness, the things I have in life, for my doingness and my beingness. That's what I got from that thing. And so I felt like I've successfully done that. I've never put myself in a position where I don't like what I'm doing. I'm unhappy with my life. I'm just getting through day to day, eventually to, I don't know, retire or something like that. In my mind, that would be a sacrifice, my 30-year mortgage or whatever. I would be sacrificing my rice, my life for the rice. So that was a very, very useful thing that I latched onto.
I hope everyone listens to this podcast, and each of those could be the subject of a long podcast. We're going to have to get moving, but those are all such great observations. I hope people take them to heart, and if they want to call you, you'll be happy to talk about it with them, I'm sure. And but that's great. You shared some great observations. Before we move on to a couple other topics, you've done so much, not only in your personal life, but in your industry life. But looking at in terms of the industry, without asking people to brag, because no one likes to, likes to brag, but just is there an accomplishment or something or a moment that kind of brings a smile to your face, where you say to yourself, yeah, I did that, and that was cool. So kind of a proudest moment, or a moment of personal accomplishment.
And say within our industry? Or in
Yeah,
general?
or anything. Yeah, anything
Or
you want
both?
to share. Yeah.
Well, I really enjoy creating jobs. I
Nice.
think I'm creating at this moment probably, either a complete or like probably about 100 people are partially or fully dependent on my company for a living. And I love
Fantastic.
that. I love that. I
Oh,
love,
that's nice.
that's the best reward of an entrepreneur is being able to create that for others. And I also created what I call a phantom stock program in my business, in my company, Baxter Research, where I treat everybody as an owner who's in my phantom stock program. So basically every quarter they get a percentage of my dividends. So not only do they have a wage, but they also get paid as though they're owners. And I feel like that's made everybody in my business have a viewpoint of an owner.
Right.
And I've had the guys that I've had in my business for a long time, I have almost no turnover. So I'm happy about that. I'm very proud about that. Otherwise,
Congratulations.
thank you. I think because I'm pretty sure because of you, I got invited to be the first chair of the provider committee with the forming NAPBS, and I was pretty much it. And the first task I got assigned to was to create guidelines for all the areas of provision, from database data, motor vehicle, drug screening, etc. Also criminal background checks. And so I spent about the first year and a half and got all those done. There were 6 of them.
I remember.
I pretty much authored the one on the criminal guidelines. And I remember I was asked to do that actually at the very first conference, I think the one in Safety Harbor, if I'm not mistaken. No, it was in Scottsdale.
Right. Yeah.
And so I went home and I started working on those. And at one point, my wife looks over my shoulder because she kind of understands what I'm doing, and she starts reading the guidelines that I wrote down. And she's like, "You're not going to give away all of our successful actions, are you?" And I'm like, what should I do? Like make up non-standards? But I'm proud of the fact that to this day, when we get sign on a new client, often I see those guidelines come that I have to sign them, that I agree to follow them. And that's a great moment. Yeah.
That is a great moment. A lot of those guidelines ended up being part of the accreditation. Yeah, it was a Scottsdale meeting. That's why I called the first meeting to order as the when we first, that was our official beginning. You were there. It was fantastic.
Yeah.
So I mean that's a nice segue into PBSAA. I'm gonna have us just take a moment. I'm gonna keep it running like. So Tim, we talked a little about your attending the first PBSA meeting and the provider guidelines that you basically birthed and wrote the criminal ones. What's been your how's PBA influenced your career? What's been your experience with PBSA?
Wow.
And beginning with NAPBS, of course.
Yeah, I mean, that's a little hard to measure. I mean, all the relationships that I've been able to develop over the years, all the friendships that I've had, that's been amazing. I mean, our industry feels like a family. Literally, you see the same, people for years. And in the education, putting up the guideposts in our industry, hearing updates on, what's happening, listening to Pam Devada, things like that have always been helpful. It puts the whole reality there about the rest of the industry because it's so easy for me to go back and just focus on my company. Mm-hmm. And it's a very kind of limited view from as a wholesaler, as a providing, criminal research. So our trade association has just been able to allow me to understand other parts of the industry, who else is out there, meet other people, establish relationships, and of course, come across new clients and be known and so forth. That's been super valuable to me.
When did you start bringing the everyone's favorite VW Bug van, rather, to the conferences?
I should buy that thing, right? I know. I thought about it, but then how would I just get it one coast, the next coast, back and forth? That thing is fragile. It's expensive to move around. But didn't you love that thing?
I love
was
it. Well,
amazing.
how do you get that to different conferences? Is it the same one, or do you get different ones?
No, it's only one. We've only had it at one, and it was because we were so close to Malibu. I mean, I think
okay.
it was like $2,000 to get it there. Something like that. It was like, so I couldn't imagine trying to take that to every conference, but it would be great. I mean, I love that thing.
Right.
That was awesome.
Well, people would love it if you're able to, but that might be your next challenge to figure out whether that's possible or not.
I know, right?
All right, I love it. Well, let's talk about we've talked about the industry, and we've covered like so much ground. It's been fantastic. But let's go out of the industry for a while, and let's talk about life beyond screening. I mean, I know I've gone kayaking with you. You mentioned motorcycles, so what do you do when you're not involved in the background screening world?
Well, I found that like I can get a relatively light laptop and a cell phone, and I can take my job anywhere, which
Right.
I love. I absolutely love. I like motorcycles. I like all kinds of motorcycles. I like riding, sport bikes, super bikes on a track. That's a lot of fun. I love riding off-road. I especially love what's called dual sport adventure. Dual sport motorcycle is a motorcycle that you can take off-road. It's legal on-road, but it's mostly an off-road bike typically. And so I think I've done something like 36,000 miles of dual sport adventure riding. In 2018, I did a route in the United States. It's called the Trans-America Trail. And it runs from, at the time it ran from Marlinton, West Virginia to Port Orford, Oregon. And by the time I was done and rode back to Reno, it was 8,000 miles on my odometer.
Wow.
So that's essentially like taking a dirt bike across the country 3 times.
That's amazing.
Yeah, I have everything with me. I've got all my own gear. I camp, and I love it. I love riding in, the West. I love riding in Utah. I love riding in Colorado. I like going up, riding 10, 12,000 feet. I like riding alone. I like riding with other people, but I've done a lot of dual sport adventure riding and a little bit over in Europe. And that's probably one of my favorite things to do.
Where can you take a bike up to 12,000 feet? Up in the Colorado Rockies?
Yeah. I don't know. Can I show you a picture?
Yeah, I'd love to.
Can you see a picture from here?
If those that are looking at the video, they can. If you're listening to the podcast, I'll have to describe it for you.
Yeah. So I'll show you a picture I took at 13,000 feet. And this was in the Rockies. It was a place I think it's called California Pass in the Rockies. But I'm going to have to find it now.
Oh, that's fantastic. I mean, getting up to 13,000 feet, and this was on a dirt bike. You got up to 13,000.
It's on that bike. Can you see that bike?
Oh yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. And for those that are listening and not watching, that's quite the bike.
It's basically an old school bike. It's they still make them. It's a Honda XR 650L, and they started making them in '92. Well, they designed it in '92, put it into production in '93. Haven't changed the bolt on it since, but I like it because it's super reliable. So it's never really going to let you down. This bike, it's pretty much bulletproof. You get a more modern bike, and maybe it'll let you down.
Well, on the trail you just mentioned, is that mainly off-road then?
Yeah, that's like 85% off road.
Oh,
so this is on that ride. Let me see if I can show it to you.
Oh,
yeah, there you go.
Incredible! You're on top of the world.
Yeah, this is on that ride.
Yeah, I mean, and for those that aren't looking at the video, if you're listening just to the audio, I mean, there's a picture of Tim in full gear on top of a mountain, and you're in the middle of just this beautiful, majestic mountain scene.
Oh yeah,
that's fantastic.
Yeah, that was 13,000 feet.
And you said you were just recently at the Laguna Seco near Monterey, and
I was
what were you
Laguna
taking a
Seco.
course, doing having the bike flip out?
Yeah, there's a school you can go to called California Superbike School. It's been around for 40 years. It was founded by a racer named Keith Code, and he's amazing. It's the school has 4 levels, and you literally do 1 level a day. So anybody can do this as long as you have about 2,000 miles of riding under your belt. You can go to the school. You can learn the basics of how to take a motorcycle, in this case a super bike, around a corner, or in this case around the track. and you can do all levels 1 through 3, give you the basics, and then level 4, you basically just work on anything that's out or wrong or not quite in with levels 1, 2, 3, and you can just cycle over and over and over again. So my son and I try to go do at least ideally like eight days. It's a 2-day camp. So 4 of those a year
Wow.
at different racetracks. And yeah, it teaches you how to take a motorcycle around the corner. And you'd be surprised, like you could go with zero knowledge and end up, feeling like you could maybe give a shot at a race.
Oh, that's
Although
amazing.
I don't race. Yeah.
You don't race, but you enjoy it. Oh, that's fantastic. See, all these years that I knew you, I had no idea about not only your travel history, but your motorcycle fascination.
The first time I did that was 2006, I think.
Wow.
It was the first time I did that to California Superbike. So I like doing the Superbike school because if you go to a track on your own on a track day, who knows what yahoos are out there, So it's a
Right.
very controlled environment, and I always learn, and I always have a coach, so it's great.
Well, when you're out in nature, you say you're camping gear, so you're out off-roading. You can just stop, set up a little ultralight tent. I don't know, what the situation might be with water or food or, a little camp stove and all that stuff, but you're all good to go.
It's like you essentially have backpacking equipment on you, and you can have some backpacking food, some freeze-dried food, or you can bring along some real food. You only have so much real estate on those bikes, but
Yeah,
you can
exactly,
you can have everything that you need on them, and so you can survive on your own, easily.
Oh, I love it. So we play a game called Fun Fact. What's sort of a fun fact you haven't revealed yet that once it's out there in the world, people will come up to you at conferences and say, "Hey, Tim," and then harass you mercifully about it. What's your hidden fun fact?
Wow. Boy, we talked about a few already. Well, I mentioned West Virginia. I bought an old farm in West Virginia, and I'm rehabbing it. There is one fun fact there. The first crop on the farm was a motocross track.
First crop. All right. So we're talking here, John Denver, West Virginia, Appalachia.
Yeah, that's right.
Coming home.
Southeast West Virginia, and it has an old Pioneer cabin on it that was built in the 1840s. So I'm rehabbing this Pioneer cabin, and it's going to be beautiful. But I kind of got interested in regenerative farming, and I got interested in this idea that you are what you eats.
Right.
Right?
Yeah.
So pay more attention to what you eats. And so now, like, I'm 100% grass-fed beef, pastured chicken, pastured eggs. I try to follow that, pull that string. If you start looking at what you eats, and if you
Right,
don't like
yeah.
the sound of what you eats, you fix that, right? And so...
Because you're eating what you eats, basically.
That's right. And so if what you eats ends up in a feed lot, it is some industrial, agricultural mega operation, is like God knows what you're putting in your body.
Yeah,
right?
exactly.
Yeah.
That's great too. So you're doing some regenerative farming. And
I'm
you're
getting
going
into
to
regenerative farming.
And in 1840, originally built Pioneer cabin, you're going to bring it into the 21st century. So,
Yeah, I'm restoring it completely. I have a neighbor up there that has a fully restored Pioneer cabin. In fact, you can go see that project if you go watch a show called Barnwood Builders. It's season 2, episode 9, called the Pipe Stem Project, and you'll see our property in the background.
oh, that's
But
fantastic.
it's my neighbor's Pioneer cabin. And unfortunately, you don't get to see the final product, but you see them rehabilitate the cabin. It's just been sitting there for, since 1840. So it's in pretty bad shape, but they completely rehab it, and then a local carpenter finishes it. And I can show you a picture if you want to see what it looks like now, but it's absolutely stunningly beautiful. I'll show you.
Yeah, show us. And again, for the people that are listening, you're not going to be able to see it, but I'll describe it.
Yeah. Okay, well, let me show you what it looked like. I took this right off the TV screen of Barnwood Builders, and...
So this is the one that has already been rehabbed. This is what you're...
Well, this is what it looked like. I took it right off the TV screen because I didn't have a before picture. That's what it looked like.
Oh, and that's
you see that?
and that's the project on TV and that's the
Yeah.
before version.
Yeah, that's the before version.
Okay.
Season 2, episode 9, called the Pipe Stem Project.
Okay.
That was on TV. That's what it looked like, all right? And this is what it looks like now.
All right, folks, and for those watching the video, you're about to see the before and after. Okay, holy moly. So the outside looks...
Can you believe that?
Yeah, I mean, the outside looks, it still retains the rustic, and on the inside, I imagine it's pretty comfortable and modern.
No, it's pretty rustic.
Pretty,
They retain the rustic too.
Rustic and modern. I mean, but there might be is there a bathroom? I mean,
Yeah, there's a bathroom. So
okay,
my
well,
cabin, I have one like that too, and I'm doing the same. I'm in the middle of making mine look like that one.
Oh, that's fantastic. So it still looks like it was built in 1840, but
It does.
But you can live in it like it's 2024.
Yeah,
or
exactly.
2026, or I forget what year we're in. Right.
Yeah, 2026.
All right.
Yeah.
Oh, Tim, that's fantastic. Well, we're coming towards the end here. I think we've covered a lot, but a couple of questions, and then we'll give you the last word. But you've done a lot, you've seen a lot, accomplished a lot, you've shared some great life lessons, but do you have any advice for people in the industry who are either entering the profession or, again, may have been in the profession, they're in it, but they're kind of maybe not on the executive team, but they're researchers or criminal record people, whatever they are, wherever they are on their journey or on their path, what might be your advice for people in the industry?
Wow. I can only really speak to my end of the industry.
Right.
And I would just say that understand what your product is, work out what your product is. But before you do that, work out what your purpose is. Right. And I don't mean your purpose in life. I mean your purpose for doing what you're doing. Like what is your purpose for being a criminal research provider? It shouldn't be something like making money or making a paycheck. That's not a purpose. I mean, it's a purpose of sorts, but
right.
Like your purpose, like our purpose that I established for, Baxter Research was, to help protect employees and employers from criminality in the workplace.
Right.
If you articulate your purpose, then your product is going to become more clear to you. It's going to be more in line with that purpose. And anything that doesn't line up with that purpose, you should shed. And anything that does line up with that purpose, you should keep. And you'll end up with a more valuable product, say, than just haphazardly putting out your shingle and starting to do criminal background checks, or what you call criminal background checks. I think it's very, very important to have a purpose for your activity, and then you design your product around that purpose. So I feel like that's been one of my most successful actions of why we have a great reputation, why we've been in the industry so long, why we've almost had no trouble the whole time we've been in the industry.
Yeah.
Make sure that your integrity is in.
Well, and that's kind of like that's currently in current lingo expresses understanding the why. In modern talk. And I have to say, for personal experience, I know you live that, because I know early on I always felt, I always considered the Baxter Research to be the gold standard, and I stand by that. So that's fantastic.
Thank you.
We covered a lot, and I really appreciate it. And as we always do, want to make sure that you have the last word, the last opportunity to, if we left anything out, or is anything you want to add, Timothy Baxter, the floor is yours.
There is one thing I would like to add. It was another thing that I'm proud of in the industry, and I feel like my company, or me, has made Massachusetts a safer place to live and work. And I can tell you what I mean by that. Massachusetts traditionally have a fractional search. There are 84 criminal courts in Massachusetts, and the fractional search only covered 28 of them and neglected the rest. And that was true right up until, it's true to some extent to this day. But for us, it was true up to 2019. Like, we were in Massachusetts, I think, maybe as early as 2016. And we understood the reality that there are 14 counties, there are 84 criminal courts. Of those 84 criminal courts, 14 obviously are upper courts or superior courts. And then the rest are district courts, or some of them are called muni courts, but they're structurally the same. They're identical, whether they're muni courts or district courts, the Boston muni courts. Every single one of those lower courts handle felony convictions. In fact, the district court system handles more felony convictions than the superior court system. So to just check the superior court plus one district court in any given county. That was the fractional search. That was the formula, and ignore the other district courts. Well, that kind of was forced by the situation that every single index was completely isolated. All the district court indexes were isolated. You had no comprehensive index until the fall, or I'd say the late summer 2019.
Boy, that brings back, I remember talking to you back in the late 90s, early 2000s, and you and I discussed that exact thing, that if you search certain counties, and I think you said Middlesex, you search just the central court, which was kind of the format that people used, you weren't searching some large percent of the entire county, but yet that was the standard search being returned. And that was something, I know that's been something that you've been keyed into from my entire time in the industry. So congratulations. I mean, that's
yeah, thank you. The numbers on that right now are 326% more felony convictions by doing a countywide over the fractional search, and 338% more misdemeanor convictions. So it's a lot of convictions you're missing if we're still doing a fractional search. Less and less and less. I'm seeing it, but it's still out there. But yeah, I think that was a good win for us.
That's great. And of course, we all know that just having a criminal record doesn't mean you can't get employed. You still have to massage it, and you still have to an individual assessment. But there's a lot to it. But you can't make those decisions in the first place without the information.
Exactly. You have to know what the guy's qualified for, what the applicant's qualified for.
And then you can make that decision. Well, that's great. I appreciate that. I remember, and I think in my book, Safe Hiring Manual, I talk about Massachusetts almost entirely based on how you educated me, as an example of holes. And that was based upon Timothy Baxter explaining how it all worked. All right.
That's fantastic, man. That's great.
Oh, that's great. Well, Tim, before we sign off, is there anything else that comes to mind you want to add and that we haven't covered yet? I think we've covered a whole lot of ground here. All right.
Well, I loved running into 2 conferences ago. That was fantastic. I haven't seen you in some time, and I love your podcast. I love what you're doing. I want to listen to all of them. And I think there's so many great people in our industry. There's so many interesting people, and I love finding out about them. So yeah, I just hope you continue. This is what you're doing right now. It's great.
I appreciate it. Yeah, I know. I think everyone, no matter where they are on the spectrum, everyone has a story.
Everybody is interesting.
Yeah,
totally.
I've yet to meet a human being who did not have something interesting and something to share. And so, some of these podcasts are kind of long, but we're in the TikTok generation now, so anything over a minute or two, you lose people. But I chose to stay to the long format. And today is a great example. We learned so much just from you and about you today. It's just amazing. I mean, I thought I knew you. I didn't know you at all. Right. As it turns out. Right.
That's awesome. That's great.
Oh, that's great. Well, ladies and gentlemen, this has been a great interview. Our guest today was my good friend, probably my longest friend in the industry. I'm not sure if I met you first or Mike Sankey first. That's now a little blurred in my mind. But I think I may have physically met you first, and you're my first person who kind of told me what this industry was all about and how to do it, and court records and how to do it right. And it's been such a pleasure to know you and work with you all these years. So, ladies and gentlemen, today we heard from Mr. Timothy Baxter, Baxter Research. Our thanks again to our sponsor, Barry Nixon, in the Pre-Employment Directory. And stay tuned to this channel because there will be future podcasts. Tim asked me to do it, so because Tim asked me, I'll do more podcasts in the future. Tim, thanks again.
Thank you.
And stay in line here.
Thank you. Take care.
Thanks. All right, that was yet another wonderful conversation with a background screening pro. If you enjoyed today's episode, don't forget to hit subscribe so you never miss an update. And hey, if you got a moment, we'd love for you to leave us a review. It really helps get the word out. For more info or to catch up on past episodes, or to make suggestions or to suggest possible future guests, head over to our website. Once again, this is your host, Les Rosen, and it's been a pleasure to bring you another episode. See you on the next episode. Thanks.